Hello and welcome to News Central Television. I am Lekon Obanjo. The headlines at this hour. Court fines Kano government 10 million naira for violating Bayero's rights. Nigeria drops charges tax evasion against Binance executive. South Africa's African National Congress says formation of government of national unity on track. Details to come your way shortly. News Central now at this hour begins with court matters. A federal high court has fined Kano government the sum of 10 million naira for violating the rights of deposed Emir Aminu Bayero. The development comes following Justice Liman Mohammed of the Federal High Court, Kano State, declaring that Bayero has jurisdiction to be heard. Justice Mohammed had on Thursday given the judgment in a case filed by the kingmaker Aminu Dan Agundi. Agundi had filed a case on the fundamental human rights of Bayero in the ongoing Emirate tussle. A Kano State High Court had also ordered substituted service on Bayero and 4 other emirs in a case filed by the Kano State government to restrain them from parading themselves as emirs. Earlier, a legal practitioner, Towo Oserowaja, spoke to us on these developments.
We have the constitutional obligation to accept every order or judgment of court and to abide by such order. But it's also constitutionally right for you not to agree. One thing is to accept, the other thing is not to agree with the said order or judgment. That is why there are levels of there are levels you take such a decision to. You can approach the Court of Appeal, then you now go to the appeals court, which is the Supreme Court. And such decision, the decision of the Supreme Court on such matter, you will not only accept, but you also will agree with such decision, because that is the final level you can go in litigation.
Away from that, the Federal Inland Revenue Service has dropped tax charges against Tigran Gambaryan, Binance's head of financial crime compliance. The charges were dropped on June 14, according to FIRS spokesperson Dare Adekanmbi, who confirmed the charges against Gambaryan and another individual were being dropped. Binance stated this latest move demonstrates Gambaryan is not a decision maker at the firm. Gambaryan and Nadim Anjarwala, Binance's regional manager for Africa, were detained on February 28 for tax evasion and money laundering, while Anjarwala escaped custody. Both executives and Binance faced charges. The lawsuit filed accused Binance of tax evasion. U.S. lawmakers criticized Nigeria for detaining Gambaryan, but the federal government insisted on due process. Now, we will come back to court matters and other related issues later, but let's tell you that President Bola Tinubu is expected to receive a draft bill seeking a return to a regional system of government for Nigeria. The proposed legislation, authored by a chieftain of the Yoruba Socio-Cultural Association, Afenifere, Akin Fakmonda, seeks, among others, new extant laws to be cited as the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, New Governance Model for Nigeria Act 2024. The said bill was, however, denounced by the House of Representatives, whose spokesman, Akin Rotimi, and the chairman, Committee on Rules and Business, said had not been listed for deliberation in the ongoing moves to review the 1999 Constitution as amended. Fakmonda said that the bill would be transmitted to the President today. Earlier, the initiator of the draft bill, Akin Fakmonda, joined us on the news to discuss this further.
We have a federal government only in name. In all practical purposes, we are a unitary government under military command and control system. We have just one constitution for the whole country. In a federal system, there are 2 tiers of government. The federal, we have its own constitution. The second tier, we have its own constitution.
Concerns have been raised over the safety of the Nigerian airspace by investigative journalist David Hundeyin. On his X handle on Friday, Hundeyin said that Nigeria has had no primary radar coverage in its airspace since 2021. And this, he said, means that when an aircraft in Nigeria's airspace turns off its transponder, like any aircraft smuggling guns, drugs, or conflict minerals would do, Nigerian air traffic controllers have no way of identifying the aircraft. He cited a memo from the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority warning aircraft operators over a recent incident where an unauthorized aircraft strayed into restricted areas in the airspace above the presidential villa in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. And joining us on the news to take a deeper bite into the story is the journalist David Hundeyin. David, it's nice to have you join us on the news.
Thank you for having me.
So let's begin with the main thrust of your post, which actually traced the historical developmental pattern of Nigeria and DR Congo to the same foundation that is getting independent on a platter. Of course, I'd like to find out what you mean in terms of this. Of course, I need your clarification on it.
So the crux of what I was trying to communicate was that in my opinion, the most significant reason behind the continued systemic dysfunction in both countries is that the foundation that both countries had in terms of the independence that they got was not an independence that was actually won through some sort of broad-based struggle, but was actually sort of negotiated with the elites of those countries, and that the elites, being the petty, immature people that they are, who are unable to work together, who are unable to share power, who are unable to see the bigger picture, shortly devolved into petty ethnic squabbling and fighting with each other, which led to military dictatorship and ultimately the destruction of both economies. And I drew a parallel between both countries, that there's a very striking parallel between the paths that the DRC and Nigeria have taken since their supposed independence in the both in the year 1960. Now, where this aviation memo that you referenced came into the conversation was that I was making the point that in addition to all the other similarities that these countries have, they are also both global hotspots for illegal arms smuggling, weapons trafficking, for drug smuggling, and for conflict minerals trafficking. And to back up this assertion, I showed a circular that was sent by the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority in April to all aircraft operators in Nigeria, where the NCAA basically said that they had received a notification from the Office of a National Security Advisor that an unidentified aircraft had been sighted in restricted airspace above the Aso Rock Presidential Villa. And the letter was essentially reminding aircraft operators to stay out of restricted airspace. Why I thought that it was interesting to flag this was that for the past few weeks, I've been going back and forth with people who are within the aviation system. Obviously, you know that I cover the aviation airspace in Nigeria as a journalist very frequently. And one of the consistent pieces of feedback that I keep on getting is that air traffic control in Nigeria, at least in the civil aviation space in Nigeria, is by the grace of God, as we say, because since 2021, there has been no primary radar coverage in Nigeria's airspace. So there are two types of radar coverage. There's primary radar and a secondary radar. So basically, they're both supposed to work together. So what secondary radar gives you is just a general sense of positioning that an aircraft is there. Primary radar is what is able to specifically pinpoint the location, the exact location of an aircraft. Now, both types of radar are supposed to work together to create total radar coverage in Nigeria's airspace. So what primary radar gives you is the ability to pinpoint the location of an aircraft, even if it has turned off its transponder, right? And what I had been getting from my sources consistently over the past few weeks, and that's not just from within the Civil Aviation Authority, that's within the Airports Authority as well, that's within the what's it called, Aerospace Management Authority as well, NAMA, is that there is no primary radar coverage in Nigerian airspace. So basically, on a daily basis, you have dozens of aircraft flying through Nigeria's airspace, and the air traffic controllers keep on hailing this aircraft that please come in, and they don't know who it is. They
But
don't know
David,
who is flying through Nigerian airspace.
but David, I'm just looking at a particular headline now, and that helps us understand where we are and where Nigeria should have been. And that has to do with a publication of April 7, 2023, saying that Nigeria received some air control equipment from Argentina. And when we have those kind of equipments that are meant to safeguard or moderate the operation of air traffic and ensure safety, and of course be able to prevent any sort of criminal activities that may be going on within that space, and we do not have those equipment on ground during the job, the question we want to ask is that where are they? Would you say that we're deliberately taken out, not installed, not used? There's someone that's trying to sabotage the system deliberately. We may need to understand that too.
So again, you would have to pose that question to the Director General of the Nigerian Aerospace Management Agency, NAMA, because as you have rightly said, the equipment is there. It exists. The budgetary provisions for these things have been made. So it's not an issue of the Nigerian government not investing in those things. The money is there and it has been paid. So the money is there, the equipment has been bought to a large extent, and yet the coverage is not there. So you then have to ask the question to NAMA that in whose interest is it for not only the primary radar coverage in Nigerian airspace to be down, which by the way is a large part of the reason why many transcontinental flights, especially coming from Southern Africa, instead of flying directly through Nigerian airspace, especially at night, they prefer to circumnavigate Nigeria. They prefer to go around Nigeria and pass through, Cameroon and Niger instead of passing through Nigerian airspace, which would be cheaper and more direct. The reason is that there is no primary radar coverage in Nigeria. So they're afraid that if there is an emergency or if they go down, they won't even be found. Which is by the way, it has happened in Nigeria before where an aircraft went down and we didn't know where it was. This is a result of not having primary radar coverage. So you have to ask the MD, sorry, not the DG, the MD of the Nigerian Aerospace Management Agency, that why have these things not been put in place? And if the MD cannot give an answer to that question, then you then also have to ask the question that who is benefiting from a situation where aircraft can fly through Nigeria's airspace and we don't know who or what is on those aircraft. We can't do anything about it. We simply don't know. So in a situation where, for example, much of the audience may not know this. On paper, Nigeria has 19 functioning airports. In reality, if you add together Nigeria's airports and airstrips, including airstrips that most of us have never heard about, Nigeria has well over 50 places where an aircraft can land and take off from around the country.
Yeah.
So, and aircrafts are using these airstrips. What are they using these airstrips to do? And how is it that aircrafts without transponders are taking off and landing out, flying through Nigeria's airspace, and we don't know what is on them? We don't even know what these aircraft are.
So basically, we're talking about a porous airspace, just as we have porous land borders. And in a very recent report, one of the governors in Nigeria said that, some bandits or some kidnappers were apprehended. They confessed to killings and they were handed to the authorities, and the courts actually granted them bail. I begin to ask the questions, is it that the Nigerian government is complicit when it comes to the safety of Nigeria as a country, of Nigerians? I mean, we need to put that in perspective.
I would argue absolutely, because first of all, bear in mind that those headlines that you cited a few minutes ago, where you said 80% of Nigeria is now covered by ground radar. First of all, that's an attempt to mislead the public, because ground radar is different from airspace radar. So that's an attempt to mislead the public into thinking that Nigeria's airspace is covered. That's ground radar. So already that's an attempt to insult the intelligence of the public and to create the idea that something that is not the case is the case. The purpose of ground radar is to monitor the position of airplanes on the ground, not airplanes in the air. So already from that point of view, you can see that someone in the government is trying to be clever by half. And then secondly, it's not just about the equipment and the systems in place, it's also even the people. So if you speak to people who work in the space, for example, the air traffic controllers, You may or may not know this. Nigerian air traffic controllers are the worst paid in the world. Not in Africa, in the world. And I have the numbers to prove this here. So I don't know if you can see the numbers on this. So I went to the trouble of printing these numbers actually. So you can see the numbers for countries like Ghana. You can see the numbers for the ASECNA countries. That's the countries in French, Western, and Central Africa. You can see the numbers for countries that are within the European aerospace zone. You can see the numbers for the US. You can see all this. And then you can see Nigeria, the equivalent of $322 a month for an air traffic controller. So I was speaking to an air traffic controller recently, and he said they have to do side hustles to survive. So an air traffic controller whose attention is supposed to be focused exclusively on keeping Nigeria's airspace safe, airspace that we all use, including you that I'm speaking to, this air traffic controller's attention is divided. He's selling clothes, he's doing drop shipping on WhatsApp, he's doing side hustles, he's selling real estate, selling cars, just putting together one or two things just to be able to pay their bills.
So,
an air traffic controller has to do that. There's no way you can look at that situation and say that the government does not know that the Nigerian government is paying air traffic controllers 3 times less than what the Ghanaian government pays air traffic controllers. Is Ghana a wealthier country than Nigeria? Is Ghana in a better financial, economic situation to Nigeria? No, it is not. So that can only mean logically that someone within the government or that a group of people within the government are intentionally sabotaging the safety of Nigerian airspace, or at least the proper operation of the Nigerian Airspace Management Agency, which then begs the question, who are these people and what is their goal?
So when we have a country that frolics with negligence of duty in this scale, what danger do you think that country could be plunging itself into on a wider scale?
Well, for one thing, where you have the NCA sending out a circular that the Office of National Security Advisor is seeing unidentified aircraft flying above the presidential villa. First of all, the very implication of that there's an unidentified aircraft that is able to violate some of what should be the most restricted airspace in Nigeria. What that basically means is that Nigeria does not have any national security whatsoever. So if you recall, last year when there were noises of, for example, going to war with Niger, what that means is that if, for example, Nigeria were to go to war with Niger, especially now that Niger is now in a military partnership with the Russian military, if the Russian Air Force were to take any sort of interest into striking targets in Nigeria, it means that Nigeria's airspace is not protected, including what should be the most protected airspace, the seat of government, where the president himself is. So if that airspace is not restricted, that also means that the airspace around military installations too will not be restricted. That has already told me that if a we don't even know whether it's civilian or it's military, an unknown aircraft can violate the airspace above the presidential villa, then that means that the airspace above, let's say, the Tactical Air Command in Makurdi, which is Nigeria's largest air force base, or the military base in Kachia, which is Nigeria's largest armory, or the Ikeja Cantonment, or Dodan Barracks, or Mogadishu Barracks. These are all strategic military locations in Nigeria. That means anybody can fly and violate those airspaces and drop whatever they want to drop on them. So Nigeria has essentially no internal defenses, and it's there for the taking. And probably the only reason why we're not in total chaos right now is because we don't actually have any neighbors who are hostile or belligerent to us yet. But what it means is that everyone will be taking notes. Everyone around us will be taking notes, especially now that the world is heading toward a sort of conflict era where people are going to start taking sides. It's like the 20th century all over again. There's going to come a time when we are going to have to come to terms with the reality that we are a country of 200 million people, 993,000 square kilometers, with no internal defenses. We're just there for the taking. Anyone can come and claim bits of our territory, and we can't do anything about it because some people have an interest in deliberately weakening the air defense or the air security of Nigeria because of whatever reason. Whatever reason it is, who knows, whether it's with minerals trafficking, blood, conflict minerals, weapons, guns, drugs, whatever it is.
Well, David, I tell you, this is a big issue that we cannot wish away, and we hope that the Nigerian government will be able to step up into sanitizing the country in all aspects to ensure that we are safe. David Hundeyin, journalist, thank you so much for your extensive contribution on the news. Many thanks for staying with us. When I head back to the courts, where we understand that an appeal court sitting in Port Harcourt has directed all parties involved in the appeal filed by members of the River State House of Assembly loyal to Federal Capital Territory Minister Nyesom Wike to maintain status quo pending the hearing of the substantive suit. The 27 pro-Wike lawmakers, led by Martins Amewule, had defected from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressives Congress. They had gone to the courts to stop moves to declare their seats vacant. The three-man panel of the appeal court, which sat virtually on Friday, adjourned the hearing of the substantive matter to June 20, 2024. To discuss this, we're joined by human rights lawyer Ikene Henry. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja ordered all parties to maintain status quo in River State. What do you make of the ruling in light of how heated up the state has been in the last few months?
I think apparently it's a continuation of an appeal that is pending before the Court of Appeal in Port Harcourt. It is actually expected to calm concerns about those who were expecting an end to that appeal today. But the reality here is that it has actually elicited some reactions by different persons and expressing different understanding of what the orders and the positions that the court has directed today, really. But I think in all, what's important is that the Court of Appeal has adjourned to the 20th of June, 2024 for hearing of the appeal. For those who would understand, it would mean that the appeal proper hasn't been heard, except that there are probably preliminary issues that the courts had to consider, and then hear and determine certain motions that had to be taken before the hearing of the main appeal.
Okay, so let's look at it from this angle. Now, Martins Amewule, on behalf of 26 others, challenged the decision of the River State High Court, which actually vacated their seats and restrained them from sitting or carrying out any legislative functions. Then what's your disposition to legal moves like this when the Constitution is clear on matters of political party defection?
Well, apparently this has been the burning issue in River State since the 11th of December 2023, when on plenary on the floor of the River State House of Assembly in the proceedings of that day, 27 lawmakers indicated and expressed their fundamental right to belong to association or cease to belong to any association, and declared formally that they were no longer members of the People's Democratic Party that sponsored them to that house. And this was clearly made known by the presiding officer, who himself is Honorable Martin Amewule, who presided on that day, the 11th day of December 23 rather. And he said publicly on as proceedings of that day, which ought to be taken judicial notice of, that all those members had voluntarily withdrawn their membership of the People's Democratic Party and had defected to the All Progressives Congress. And they actually decided, and of course that was understandable, to read out the letter of the Deputy Speaker. It's understandable because that's the second of the ranking in the House, and read completely that. So since then, since that 11th of December, there have been reactions pursuant to the provision of the Constitution, Section 109, subsection 1, paragraph G, which is extant and then very clear, very direct, unambiguous. And Nigerian citizens, especially those in River State, have ensured that we promote the observance and, of course, uphold the provisions of the Constitution. It doesn't matter who was involved. So that matter had gone on. There are a lot of litigations in different courts, at the High Court of River State and the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt and elsewhere. So the last of it, that probably is the foundation to this appeal at the Court of Appeal, is the one that Right Honorable Victor Okojombo and others approached the High Court of River State, presided over by Honorable Justice C.N. Wale. Okay. And then that matter too is subsisting in that High Court, but there was an interlocutory application that the courts heard and determined and made some interlocutory orders, an interlocutory injunction restraining Martin Amewule and 26 others from parading themselves as members of the River State House of Assembly and engaging in legislative functions. So that was the basis for the appeal at the Court of Appeal.
Okay, so let's just, in a very few seconds, wind back a bit. And I'd like to put this question. Is it constitutionally right now to claim that neither President Bola Tinubu nor Governor Fubara has the statutory powers to stop the Independent National Electoral Commission from conducting fresh election to replace these 27 Rivers State lawmakers that defected based on the agreement that was initially reached?
Now, apparently, the Independent National Electoral Commission is a creation of law. Section 153 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria established that commission. And then moving forward, the Constitution showed that that commission is independent, meaning that no individual, no authority shall interfere with the performance of the functions of that commission, including directing the commission one way or the other, or restraining the commission from performing its function except by an order of court. So, Mr. President, because he's not above the Constitution, so Mr. President or the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory or any individual cannot, under any guise, except otherwise, except we have decided to jettison the rule of law, and then which we profess to actually uphold. That's the only point that you could lean on any purported agreement or any other designation of any sort to seek to restrain the Independent National Electoral Commission to conduct elections. So, and I think very important, that the Independent National Electoral Commission has a statutory and constitutional duty to conduct election where there are vacant positions in any legislative house, and that indeed is what they got to do. It's a public duty they need to perform.
Okay, so now that we've been able to establish that once a lawmaker or politician defects from a party, most especially in the legislative house, to another party, that seat will be declared vacant because that was not the party or the seats that actually brought him, that's not the party that actually brought him into power. So finally, what might eventually play out in Rivers State as power tussle revolving the governor of the state, Fubara, the FCT minister, their loyalists continue to linger, and of course, what the court ruling will be. What should we expect?
Well, it's unfortunate. It's been an unavoidable experience that we've had here in Rivers State, unnecessary skirmish that I think I imagine that we shouldn't have had, but unfortunately is here. So, but I make clear positions, constitutional positions. The governor of a state has constitutional functions to perform, and then there are exclusive functions. So you would not imagine that the governor of a state will have any problem with the minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria with respect to the performance or the functions of the governor pursuant to the provisions of the Constitution. So to that extent, whatever difference that the minister would have with the governor shouldn't be in relation to the performance of the functions of the governor with the provisions of the Constitution. That would be an aberration to constitutional democracy. Then again, the crisis have actually had the negative effect in the state. We thank God that we still are able to have some level of peace in this country, in this state, and then that the governor is going on with administration. Apparently, we have the problem more in the legislature, that is the House of Assembly, more than in the executive, because the governor is performing the executive functions. He has his cabinet constituted, he has his aides, and then is going on with the functions of state. But it is in the legislature that we have had much of the problem, where these 27 former lawmakers deliberately, willingly, without prompting, decided to abandon the political party that sponsored them to office. And recall that to qualify to run election to the House of Assembly, one of the qualifications is that you must be sponsored by a political party. And so when you get into office, you have to stay there. And we have cured that mischief that we had before the first alteration in 2010. When we had the alteration in 2010, the alteration of the Constitution, I think, that could be the right alteration, that we made these provisions that you do not, and you cannot on your own willingly defect and then think that you should hold on to that position.
Hold on to the seat. Akine Henry, human rights lawyer, thank you so much for shedding so much light on this. We appreciate your contribution.
Thank you very much for having me.
Moving on now, the Nigerian Customs Service has intercepted large consignments of illicit drugs, including cannabis indica, prohibited codeine, and other illicit drugs from Canada and India. Comptroller General of Customs Adewale Adeniyi, who addressed the press in Lagos disclosed that beyond revenue losses, some port operators and officers of the service are suspected to be involved in the illegal drug imports. According to the CGC, a breakdown of the drugs include 3 plastic drums of cannabis indica, 46 bags of cannabis indica, 877 packs of syrup, and 82 cartons of other drugs valued at 4 billion naira. Ahead of the July 13, 2024 local government elections in Delta State, South Nigeria, the State Independent Electoral Commission has concluded the verification and screening of candidates for the elections. 11 political parties will be jostling for the chairmanship, vice chairmanship, and councillorship positions across the 500 electoral wards in the 25 local government areas of the state. The Central correspondent Osinazu completes the report.
The chairmanship, vice chairmanship, and councillorship aspirants for the 11 political parties vying for various political positions across the 500 electoral wards in the 25 AGAs of Delta State are here at the State Independent Electoral Commission headquarters in Asaba, the state capital, with their credentials to be screened by the Commission for the positions they filled in their various forms, earlier submitted to the State Electoral Umpire. Addressing the aspirants, the DSEC chairman solicited their cooperation as the exercise aims at ensuring that documents submitted in DSEC Form 002 were genuine.
The screening is to ensure that those who will be nominated for public office meet the criteria for such nominations. They should be able to come with their credentials, come with their tax clearance, and any other relevant documents.
Some who were successfully screened speak on the process and the state electoral umpire to conduct free and credible polls.
I have confidence in them because right from the screening, they did everything by checking all the documents to make sure everything is in order. So by so doing, I believe that by the grace of God, they will conduct free and fair elections.
The governor is a sincere person. We hope the DSEC is sincere to conduct a free and fair election.
It wasn't too inconveniencing, but I think it is in strict compliance with the relevant provision of the DSEC law.
Meanwhile, DSEC's public relations officer said the commission has started voters' education and enlightenment with local languages across the state.
Apart from that, billboards are everywhere at various locations in Delta State, Delta Central, Delta South, and Delta North. So with that, I know Deltas are well informed about the oncoming general elections in the state.
Now that the screening is over, attention is now on the candidates to market their manifestos to the electorate through campaigns with about a month to the council polls. In Asaba, for News Central, Austin Azu.
To talk in politics, the People's Democratic Party, the opposition party in Nigeria's Borno state, has echoed a strong call to the state government to prioritize the revitalization of the local economy and the creation of more job opportunities for the youth population. Secretary of the PDP in Borno, Ali Aliu, made this known in an exclusive interview with News Central. Our correspondent, Sumari Kirawa, completes the reports.
Borno State in Nigeria's northeast, once ravaged by the age-old Boko Haram insurgency, now picking up from the ashes. Communities being resettled with reconstruction, rehabilitation, and the quest for better living.
They should provide adequate security. The government, through its intervention programs, i.e. the Bank of Industry, the CBN interventions, and what have you, should actually look at these business owners and ensure to see how they can give them additional capitals to boost up those trades that they have been doing before.
The PDP has proposed an approach including the reactivation of industries, the enforcement of local government autonomy, and the provision of support to border communities to boost cross-border trade.
The government needs to employ the services of the National Export Promotion Council, the Bank of Industry, the Northeast Development Commission, etc., etc. All these people can come in, the government can seek for their intervention to come and support these people so that they should be economically stable. Their businesses would be okay, and it would have a less effect on the government. If let's take, for instance, if those businesses are flourishing and they are doing very well, the government gets enough revenue to serve those that are not in government and to ensure that they have done other government development projects. Secondly, at least if one person is doing a particular trade, he or she might employ like 10 people. With those little things, we have at least taken a lot of unemployed people out of the street.
By providing job opportunities to the returnees and establishing industries in the rural communities, the PDP stalwart noted will hasten Borno restoration.
Local government economy is one of the major reasons democracy and the government will come very close to the people. An average Nigerian finds it very difficult to feed. So, but with the little effort, if the federal government is going to complement the state government and what have you, I'm sure the economic variables will push people from Borno State out of the current poverty situation they are in.
While highlighting the importance of decentralization and empowering local authorities, the party stressed the need for greater fiscal and administrative independence for local governments to witness enhanced transformation. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Now, the month of June is dedicated to men's mental health awareness, and June 10 to 16 is International Men's Health Week. It is meant to not only raise awareness of men's mental health issues, but to also encourage men to seek help. News Central's Bettina Inweli reports.
Mental health is an integral part of health and well-being, and yet it is still being neglected in some parts of the world. In Nigeria, men are often expected to be strong and self-sufficient, making it difficult to acknowledge their struggles and ask for help. The primary focus of the Men's Mental Health Month is to encourage men to speak up and seek help for mental health issues. Other aims include breaking the stigma surrounding men's mental health and promoting a culture of openness and support for men who are struggling.
It's the economic challenge we are having at the moment. It's really affecting a lot. And you know, you're trying your best, but it seems your best is not up to. So you know, that can be mentally derailing. The inability of the marital management is another problem too.
Work promotes good mental health by providing a way to earn money, a feeling of self-assurance, and a sense of purpose and accomplishment. On the other hand, poor working conditions that involve discrimination, inequality, heavy workloads, lower wage earnings, and job insecurity or instability can jeopardize mental health. Other risk factors include grief caused by divorce, separation, loss of a partner, loss of a child, trauma as a result of adverse childhood experiences, and disability.
And this is why in the world today, men suicide is rated the highest, amongst men's mental health problems. The first way to reduce stigma is for us to not keep quiet. What we are doing right now is a primary way to reduce the stigma against men's mental health. We need every man out there to know that there is no shame expressing how you feel to those who you know can listen to you and listen empathetically.
Research and information about the level of mental health services in Nigeria are very hard to come by or non-existent, which has contributed towards the neglect of mental health issues. There is an urgent need for concerted effort between the government and policymakers to rise to the occasion of providing accessible and affordable mental health services for the mental well-being of the populace. In Lagos, for News Central, Bettina Nwili.
Bettina, thank you so much for that in-depth report. Coming up on the news, South Africa's ANC's Didiza elected new parliament speaker. We'll bring you details in a short while. Don't go away. News Central now continues in West Africa, where the top court in military-governed Niger Republic has lifted the immunity of the country's deposed president, Mohamed Bazoum, paving the way for a possible trial nearly a year after he was overthrown by mutinous soldiers. Abduldan Galadima, president of the state court, the country's highest legal authority that was created in November by the military government, announced the decision on Friday. Under house arrest with his family, Bazoum is accused of having spoken by telephone with French President Emmanuel Macron and the United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken in a bid to secure Western support during the July 2023 coup. The court proceedings were postponed twice, with Bazoum's lawyers complaining of several obstacles to the rights of the defense. In Southern Africa, South Africa's newly elected parliament has voted an African National Congress politician, Toko Diziza, as speaker. The new partnership between the African National Congress, Democratic Alliance, and the Inkatha Freedom Party saw Diziza beat the economic freedom fighters Veronica Mente by 284 votes to 49. Diziza is no stranger to running parliament, having served as a House chairperson in the 5th administration. Meanwhile, the leader of South Africa's biggest opposition party, John Steenhuisen of the Democratic Alliance, said his party has reached an agreement to form a multi-party coalition government. Steenhuisen said the DA has reached agreement on the statement of intent for the formation of a government of national unity. He added that the DA would join the ruling ANC and the Zulu nationalist IFP. Earlier, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo had opened the first sitting, swearing members of parliament in batches ahead of planned votes on the election of a speaker, deputy speaker, and the president. We also tell you that the African National Congress has begun signing an agreement with the opposition Democratic Alliance to form a government of national unity. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula made this known on Friday to reporters in Cape Town. Cyril Ramaphosa, the 5th ANC president in 30 years, had called for a government of national unity after his party lost its absolute majority in last month's general election. But the economic freedom fighters and other leftist parties shunned the deal. Ramaphosa is now expected to win the secret ballot of MPs to confirm his re-election.
The ANC has circulated the statement of intent document and is giving parties the space to engage with the statement of intent. The ANC will sign the agreement with every political party that agrees to form the government of national unity. We have started signing with the Democratic Alliance. The government of national unity is on track. So we need to move forward. We need stability. We need to bring assurances to the masses of our people, first and foremost South Africans who have voted, including those who have not voted, that the
In sports, Everton captain Seamus Coleman has signed a one-year contract extension to remain at the club for a 16th season. The 35-year-old Republic of Ireland defender has made a club record 363 Premier League appearances since joining from Sligo Rovers for £60,000 in 2009. Hampered by injuries last season, he made only 12 Everton appearances. In May, the director of football, Kevin Thirlwell, said some players will be sold this summer and has asked fans for patience and understanding as Everton works to improve their financial condition. Seamus Coleman, who made his Everton debut against Benfica in 2009, was named club captain in 2019. And that's all at this hour. Before we go, we take a look at some of our top stories. Court fines Kano government 10 million naira for violating Bayero's rights. Nigeria drops charges against Binance executive. South Africa's African National Congress says formation of government of national unity on track. Don't forget to send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number and email on your screen. You can follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Liko Omabanjo.